Thanks to all of you, there's an important new memorial on the Mall in Washington, D.C., the National World War II Memorial. Designed by Friedrich St. Florian, it creates a special place to commemorate the sacrifice and celebrate the victory of World War II. At the same time, it enhances a space that is already special, our National Mall. The memorial covers more than 7 acres, 2/3 of it landscaping and water. It's built of bronze and granite, some 17,000 pieces of granite from South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, California, and Brazil. The memorial commemorates the battles of World War II and the people who fought them. But it's much more than a memorial to hardship and gunfire, sacrifice and heroism. It's a celebration of the spirit that brought all Americans together, black and white, Native American and first-generation immigrant, soldier and factory worker. On the battlefront and on the home front. They've been called the greatest generation that ever lived, and Americans everywhere have helped create this memorial to say thank you. Come with me and discover the special significance that's built into the granite and bronze of this memorial. We'll enter by the ceremonial walkway that leads from 17th Street. To your left and right, you'll see flagpoles. The base of each flagpole bears an inscription and the seals of the military services and merchant marine. Inset in the balustrades to your left and right are 24 sculptured bronze panels by Raymond Caskey, whose studio created all the sculpture for the memorial. The 12 on the north, to your right, depict the Atlantic front. The 12 on the south show the Pacific front. Most of the panels were inspired by historical photos. They depict not just battles, but the all-out mobilization of America's agricultural, industrial, military, and human resources that ultimately led to victory. When you reach the Memorial Plaza, you'll see a restored and improved rainbow pool, with its historic fountains working again for the first time in decades. Embracing the plaza are 56 pillars that represent each of the individual states, territories, and the District of Columbia. The pillars are joined together by a bronze rope that symbolizes the bonding of the nation in a common cause. Two bronze wreaths, one of oak and one of wheat, symbolize America's role as both the arsenal of democracy and the breadbasket of the world. To the right and left are 2 memorial pavilions, each 43 feet high. The South Pavilion commemorates the war in the Pacific, and the North, the war in the Atlantic. In each pavilion, 4 bronze columns support American eagles that hold a suspended laurel wreath to memorialize the victory of the World War II generation. On the floor of each pavilion is the World War II Victory Medal. Beyond the rainbow pool, you'll see the Freedom Wall. Here we mark the price of freedom. A field of 4,000 sculpted gold stars commemorates the more than 400,000 Americans who gave their lives. The gold star has its own history. During the war, blue stars were displayed to indicate family members serving in uniform. The stars changed to gold when a loved one was lost. The pillars closest to the Freedom Wall, occupying places of honor, represent the original 13 states. The rest are ranked in the order in which they achieved statehood or became part of the United States. Every element of the World War II memorial works to a single purpose, eloquently expressed in engraving of the announcement stone we passed at the ceremonial entrance. Here in the presence of Washington and Lincoln, one the 18th century father and the other the 19th century preserver of our nation. We honor those 20th century Americans who took up the struggle during the Second World War and made the sacrifices to perpetuate the gift our forefathers entrusted to us. A nation conceived in liberty and justice.
Imagine being a soldier, thousands of miles from home, defending a country that is not your own. The cold is bone-chilling. The enemy is endless. You are ill-equipped and the mission is unclear. You are told you will be home by Christmas, but that will not be. It is 1950, and you are in the middle of a power struggle between the President of the United States, Harry Truman, and the most famous general in American history, Douglas MacArthur. You are a Korean War soldier, one of America's forgotten heroes. Now learn the story behind the memorial built to honor all who served. Our nation honors her sons and daughters who answered the call to defend a country they never knew and a people they never met. In 1950, America and the United Nations entered into one of the least well-understood wars in modern history.
The Korean War is not well understood, and the questions I get from school children, and unless they've read some history, or a lot of people that have had veterans that were fathers or grandfathers or uncles, and they want to know about the war. They say, why did this war start?
Although tens of thousands of Americans perished, this war went largely unnoticed by future generations until a process that began in 1986 with the presidential appointment of a 12-member Korean War Veterans Memorial Advisory Board, and culminated with its dedication in 1995. This is the story of the many people and organizations that were responsible for bringing the memorial to life. The Korean War Veterans Memorial rests on sacred ground near the Lincoln Memorial and the Vietnam Veterans Memorial on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. 33 years after the war, Congress authorized the creation of the Korean War Veterans Memorial.
We decided that we would just write up a request to the Congress. We printed it up and we appeared and testified, and we requested a Korean War memorial on the mall.
As you approach the memorial, you see the field of service, the 19 statues in combat formation emerging from the woods. To the left of the field of service is the United Nations curb, which lists all 22 countries who participated in the war. Directly in front of the field of service statues is the Pool of Remembrance, which honors the dead, the missing, and the wounded. Next to the Pool of Remembrance is the large granite wall, engraved with "Freedom is not free." Finally, the mural wall rests to the right of the field of service.
One of the requests from the American Battle Monuments Commission was that we honored all the support forces, and most people don't realize there, I think it was, I can't remember, 17 or 19 support people for every one guy in the field.
The design team held a competition for artists for the mural wall. Out of all the entrants, they selected designer Lewis Nelson as the muralist for the project.
He was chosen to do the faces, and he's the one who, you know, we worked with him certainly, but he's the one who put together, he and Jennifer Stoller was her name, put together the composition of the faces.
The granite was transported from California to Minnesota, where it was cut and engraved. The wall is constructed of 41 panels of granite and measures 164 feet in length and ranges from 11 to 4 feet in height.
We had a few test panels made in Minnesota, flew out there and looked at them and brought them outside, and they were covered with dust from the blasting and being in this plant. And we said, you know, can we clean off the panels? And one of the workmen went and got cup of water and a rag and poured the water across the top and wiped the panel, and it was, so big. And all the etching disappeared. And everybody was, oh my God. And then in about 3 minutes, this was sitting out in the sun, these faces slowly began to emerge out of the stone in this kind of almost magical experience. And we were all, just caught our breath. It was just amazing. The idea was, from a distance, when you looked at the field of service, the 19 guys, that this wall would appear to have lightly etched snow-capped mountains in the background. I suddenly realized these are not mountains.
There are 2,400 pictures of the GIs in Korea between 50 and 53, and we call that the support wall. And on that wall are the naval ships and the air and the supply lines and the doctors and nurses and the chaplains and everything to support that guy in the field. We've had people come back and find themselves when they were 19 and 20 years old on the wall. And today they're, late 70s.
Now, almost 60 years after the Korean War began, a memorial stands to honor all who served and to act as a reminder of the profound cost of the liberty that we have as American citizens. Freedom is not free.
My name's Alan McCabe. I'm a Park Service volunteer. I've been honored over the last 12 years to have almost 7,000 hours here as a volunteer. It's a labor of love for myself and all of the volunteers that wear the yellow hats to work at this wonderful memorial. Because you see, this beautiful memorial had been designed by a 21-year-old college student from Yale, and her name is Maya Lin. So just for a moment, I'd like you to imagine the land behind you here without the wall there. This was just simply a gently rolling hill. Maya would later write that the first thing that she envisioned was a giant knife cutting a huge gash in America. And one of the reasons I always do the talk from up here is it's easy to visualize that knife cutting into the earth, digging deeper and deeper, and finally pulling back up out of the earth. So the wall itself is a wound or a scar in America. She used black granite as the material. Black, she said, is not symbolic of defeat, but symbolic of earth, since it is a cut into the earth. She used granite for a very specific reason. She knew granite would last hundreds and hundreds of years, but more importantly is the symbolism of granite. Granite acts as the permanent barrier between the living and the dead. We can reach onto that wall and touch their names, but they're never again going to enter our world. Maya also knew something else about black granite, and I also think that that's an extremely important part of this memorial. She knew that when you polish black granite, that the surface of the memorial would actually become a mirror. And so as you guys are down at the wall and looking at it, you will see yourself in the reflections of the names. And she wanted us, the living, to see our reflection in their names, so that we would always remember that those guys were just like us. Sons, brothers, fathers, best friends, and boyfriends. In 1984, President Ronald Reagan spoke here, and I remember a line from his speech that day. President Reagan said, "Visitors will come to the wall to find the name of a loved one, and when they finally find the name, they will find it in their own reflection." The reflections off of that wall are so powerful, you can see visitors reflected all the way up here on the plaza. So now remember, one of the contest rules, the memorial had to contain the names, but the rules didn't say how the names needed listed. Maya Lin could have done it any way she wanted, but the way she did it is really the reason she won the contest. Visitors have asked me if the names are listed by state, or by branch of service, or by rank. A very frequently asked question is, why not list them alphabetically? It'd be easier to find a name that way, right? all the Adamses together and Smiths together and Johnsons, but there are 667 guys with the last name of Smith on the wall. And Maya Lin said she didn't want the memorial to look like a telephone book. What she did say is that she wanted the memorial to tell the story of a journey through time. And so Maya Lin wrote the story of the journey day by day in the order that they died or went missing. And that is so powerful to me for several reasons. First of all, it turns the memorial into a diary, literally writing the history of the Vietnam War day by day in the very names themselves. Secondly, is that it puts men who fought together and died together, always together on the wall. A squad in Vietnam could have had 8 or 10 guys from 8 or 10 different states, and maybe the only time they ever knew each other is when they were in Vietnam. But if they died together, they're always going to be together on that wall. And also Maya Lin said she wanted our Vietnam veterans to come back to this memorial and to find their own place in the journey. So if I know when a veteran served in Vietnam, I can get them back exactly in front of the panels to be with the guys that they served with. Many of our volunteers are Vietnam vets. I can usually tell when they served in Vietnam by where they stand at the wall. They're back with the guys that they served with. So now you know the names are chronological by day. So the big question is, where do the names start? Now most visitors come in on this western point of the wall. The Lincoln Memorial's up here, all the tour buses stop out here. And it's logical or easy to assume that the names start at this end. But I also hear visitors telling their friends they think the names start up at the other end. The fact is, Maya Lin didn't start the names at either end. Maya Lin chose to start the names in the center of the memorial. And there's a very specific reason for that. That is the most powerful section of the memorial. It's the deepest section, 10.5 feet tall are the panels down in that area. And it's a very quiet place. It blocks out all the city noise and the street noise. So the wall starts with our first 2 men killed, Major Dale Bice and Master Sergeant Chester Ovnand, who died 8 July 1959. And from there it begins to read like a diary. Day by day, panel by panel, 29,000 names out as it works its way out eastward toward the Washington Monument. It recedes into the earth on May 25th, 1968. That's the halfway point in our losses. Then it swings around, it picks back up the same day, 25 May 1968, marches all the way back in another 29,000 names, and it ends with our last 18 men killed on May 15th, 1975. And so why would Maya Lin design the memorial this way? Well, her answer was so simple and so powerful. She said she did it this way so that the first and the last would be together. Her way of symbolically bringing closure to America's longest war. So it starts in the center, symbolically goes full circle. The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, side by side at the deepest section of the memorial. Maya Lin wrote that she wanted visitors to come in from either side. As they walk down into the valley, the cost of war will get more and more powerful around them. Until at the deepest section, where it's a very quiet place, you'll meet the first and the last together. And I always showed visitors how long this war lasted. Some of the guys killed on the last day, on the 15th of May, 1975, were only 18 years old when they died. They were only 2 years old when Dale Bice and Chester Ovnand died in 1959. But they're always going to be together, side by side, bringing closure to this terrible war. Maya Lin said as visitors exit the memorial that symbolically it would release them as they walk back out into the sunlight. She pointed the eastern wall right at the Washington Monument. She pointed the western wall right at the Lincoln Memorial. She said to do this, it would cradle the memorial between 2 of our greatest presidents and give the Vietnam Veterans Memorial an historical place here on the National Mall. Now, on this memorial, there are no references to rank, race, religion, gender, or branch of service. They all wore the uniform of the United States, and they all paid the same price. Black, white, Jew, Christian, male, female, a private or a general, it doesn't matter. On this wall, everybody is equal. There are some symbols that are used by the names, though, and every name has a symbol by it. Most names have a diamond by their name, and that means they've been declared dead. But when the wall was built, there were 1,256 men listed on the wall who were missing in action. So alongside of their name is a plus symbol, an artistic symbol of hope. Over the years, we've normalized relations with Vietnam. They've allowed our search teams back in, and we have found and identified the remains of more than 500 missing in action. And when that occurs, the engravers come back here to the wall in May, and they change the pluses into diamonds. They've now changed 520, including 13 this May, dropping the total of missing in action now down to 736. There's another symbol that was designed for the wall but never used, and that's that if we should ever find a missing in action who's still alive, we would put a circle around his plus, a symbol of life. Unfortunately, we've never found a missing in action still alive. The wall turned 30 years old last November, and it's hard now to imagine how this beautiful memorial could have been so controversial. But believe me, the critics screamed, and they screamed pretty loudly, and they were actually able to force a compromise. The compromise was a decision to add this statue, the three servicemen statue. It was added Veterans Day 1984, done by a great local sculptor named Frederick Hart. Hart depicts an African-American, Caucasian, and a Hispanic soldier, representing over 95% of the U.S. servicemen who were in Vietnam. He shows no reference to branch of service or rank because he wanted any of our veterans to be able to identify with them. And Hart's work here is so great that he even shows one of the soldiers with one of his dog tags laced into one of his boots. It was not uncommon for a soldier to separate your two dog tags, to keep one around your neck and lace the other dog tag into one of your boots. And Hart captures that. But to me, what's so powerful about this three servicemen statue is actually where it's at. Because to many visitors, it looks like these guys have just come back from patrol, exhausted in the heat and humidity of Vietnam. And as they step out of the tree line, they stop in shock, suddenly confronted not by the enemy, but by a black granite wall with the names of more than 58,000 they had served with. Others think maybe they've stopped up here not wanting to get any closer because they're afraid they'll find their own name is written on the wall. About 100 yards down this walkway is the Women's Memorial, dedicated Veterans Day of 1993. Done by another great sculptor named Glenna Goodacre, Glenna depicts three uniformed American women aiding a wounded U.S. soldier as they wait for the rescue or dust-off helicopter to come in. And even though the soldier in the statue appears to have suffered a terrible chest wound, Glenna would later write that what kept her so focused on completing that sculpture was the belief that the soldier does not die, but is saved by those three women. We're often asked if there are any women on the wall. Well, the military's changed a lot in 40 years. We've lost about 150 women serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, but in Vietnam they were mostly behind the lines in support roles. About 85% of the women who served were nurses. There are 8 women on the wall, all 8 of them nurses, 7 Army, 1 Air Force. They're listed right along with the men in the order that they gave their lives. But around the Women's Memorial are planted 8 yellowwood trees in honor of the 8 women on the wall. And finally, several years ago, we recognized with a small plaque over here in the plaza the hundreds and thousands of men and women who have died as a result of their service in Vietnam, whose names will never be eligible to be on the wall. They may have died from post-traumatic stress disorder, cancer from exposure to some of the defoliants like Agent Orange that were used in Vietnam. We call this the In Memory plaque to honor all of those who died as a result of their service, whose names will not be on the wall. On behalf of the National Park Service and all the volunteers who work here at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, thanks for remembering, and thanks for coming to see us today at the wall.